guys for coming. This week we've learned a lot about the underlying GWT technologies. Now we're going to take a look at some of the tools that will help improve your productivity. If you remember one thing about this panel, remember that there are so many great GWT tools that we could barely fit everyone on stage. Let's start by defining a tool. It's anything that will make your life as a developer easier. On one hand, we got widget libraries for things like Scriptaculous wrappers or date pickers or progress bars. On the other hand, we've got some great IDE plugins and WYSIWYG editors. This morning, Greg Murray presented the NetBeans plugin. There's also great ones for IntelliJ and Eclipse. And there's also some really good Java tool plugins for things like Maven, Ant, JSF, and Seam. We've got a great group of panelists. To my left here, we have Eric Kleiberg from Instantiations. They're the creators of the GWT Designer tool. Next to him is Fred Sauer. He did quite a bit of things. GWT D&D, which is a drag and drop framework. GWT Voices, which is sound. GWT Log for logging. Let's see, GWT Game for game engine. And since I talked to him at lunch, he might have had one or two more GWT frameworks he's created. Next to him is Ray Cromwell, who you might have heard talk earlier today, creator of the ChronoScope visualization, charting, and vector graphics framework. And at the end of the table, we have Robert Hansen, who created the popular GWT Widget Library, GWT Server Library, and is also the author of the book GWT in Action. On this panel, we're going to let the panelists introduce themselves, show a little bit about their tool. I'll ask them a couple questions, and then we'll open it up to the audience for questions. So let's start with Eric Kleiberg. He's going to show us a little bit about Instantiations GWT Designer.
I'm going to step down here. And I'm Eric Kleiberg from Instantiations. We're based out of Portland, Oregon. We do a number of different tools for Eclipse, including a line of GUI builders for doing Swing, SWT, and GWT. Talk about our GWT Designer. I have a couple slides introducing what the product does. It's basically a set of tools to help you build GWT applications, both graphically, build, deploy, etc. in Eclipse. A short list of the various features of the product. It's pretty comprehensive for GUI builder. It's based on our window builder technology, which is probably, at least I believe, the best GUI builder available in the Eclipse world for doing Swing and SWT. It gives you a true WYSIWYG representation of your GUI layout as you are working on it. It provides very nice feedback for things like flex tables and grids, tab panels, absolute panels, etc. Graphical editing of menus. A hallmark of the tool is bidirectional code generation, so you can work either in the design view or the source view, and it'll keep both in sync. So you can liberally refactor the generated code. You can add new attributes and so on. Those will be reflected in the design view. It has wizards for creating most of the different types of GWT elements, like composites, dialog boxes, modules, remote services, etc. Supports creating custom composites, so you can create a custom composite composed of multiple widgets and then reuse that in other panels. It also supports doing things like exposing individual properties, like say the text on an individual button as a public property that can be reused somewhere else, or an entire widget if you wish. Supports visual inheritance, so you can create a visual inheritance chain of different components. For example, a composite with 2 buttons, and then subclass that, move one of the buttons, add a checkbox, expose some properties, subclass it again, change some attributes, and so on. Very nice integrated CSS support. So there's a CSS editor where you can change any CSS property, and those are reflected. Since it's a WYSIWYG tool, you'll see those reflected in the design view. Intelligent refactoring support that basically adds refactoring enhancements to Eclipse. So when you rename something like a remote service, it automatically renames the async and the impl associated classes, and you can sort of see what's some of the things it's renaming there. Very nice internationalization support, so you can extract all of the hard-coded strings into resource files, manage multiple locales, switch between locales on the fly, so you can have English, French, German. Switch the locale from the drop-down menu, and you'll see the widgets update to reflect the new language. As you continue to edit in the design view, if you've extracted strings, the strings will be updated in the property files rather than in the source. Everything is kept in sync. Some nice enhanced compilation. Earlier folks were talking about being careful about using aspects of the core JWT libraries that aren't available in GWT. GWT Designer adds some compilation enhancements to Eclipse to catch things like that, so it'll flag cases where you're trying to use core JWT classes that aren't available, or trying to use classes that haven't been imported properly into GWT. Also provides nice convenience functions like a GWT application launch feature, so you can right-click on a GWT application and simply say run as GWT application, or you can go into the Eclipse launch configuration dialog and set it up manually if you want more control over the GWT shell parameters, things like that. We recently added also support for launching GWT JUnit tests. We also have build and deployment, so you can generate WAR files. It integrates with web projects, things of that nature. It'll generate a nice Ant script, build XML for you whenever you want to deploy, which you can either run that, modify it if you want to enhance it. And future directions, we're continuing to track all emerging GWT releases. The current product supports the latest 1.4.61. And when 1.5 comes out, we'll have an update for that within a couple of days. Things we're working on, support for general UI factories. So rather than accessing or setting up a button like this, new button, you could create a factory class and reference, customize your button in the factory class and then reference a factory method, for example. And one of our goals for our next major release is to add support for all the emerging GWT add-on libraries like the GWT Widget Library, GWT EXT, and MyGWT. And you can download a free 14-day eval. The product is $39 a year per user, so hopefully it'll pay for itself in the first hour you use it. Great. That's what I have.
Great. Let's speaking of widget library, let's move to Robert Hansen. Robert, you want to give a quick rundown of what your library does?
It's a little bit of everything. I guess where I came from, I was a Java developer working server-side code, and I heard about GWT, and I'm like, wow, I can do what all those JavaScript guys do now. And so I went home, started coding, and it's really a hobby more than anything else. I can't say that I really use any of these widgets for work. It's just for fun, just to see if I could do it. And the license is Apache 2. It's free. Take it, use it, steal it. That's why I built it, just to share it and to show it. Early on, when on the GWT forum, there was really a lot of buzz, and the people on the list, it was about hacking GWT and just seeing what you could do with it. And that's where the library came from. After I started adding widgets, I started asking other people to contribute. In the early days, people would just create a widget, and nobody was making jars yet. They were just posting their code to the mailing list. So I would contact people and say, do you mind if I add this one and add that one? And the widget library built up from that. So it's not just me. It's a lot of people involved. At one point, the George G. Gorgavasilis, is that close?
Sounds good.
That's close. It's on video. He'll correct me if I'm wrong. He created some Spring integration that we added to the library, and that later broke off to the GWT server library. It's available on the same site, and actually he just put up a release last night, which gives you Spring integration really easily to do GWT RPC. And I think he also hooked it up with the GWT for Hibernate project as well. I don't know, what else?
Great, yeah, that's a good overview. You want to pass the mic down to Ray and give a little quick description of ChronoScope?
Okay. Slides first? Yeah. So my name is Ray Cromwell, and I'm a CTO of Timepedia. which is sort of a stealthy startup company. We're trying to basically do for what I say for the time dimension what Google Earth and Google Maps have done for the spatial dimensions. So we're indexing massive amounts of historical, measured scientific data, and we're going to provide it in a format that makes it easy for people to visualize it, data mine it, and collaborate with people and share their visualizations and try to tell a story about what's happened in the past. To that end, though, we had to create a tool for visualization. So we had to create this thing, which I named ChronoScope. It's actually harkens back to a Philip K. Dick novel, so you can go look it up. But the point of ChronoScope was to build a charting library that could run anywhere, because we wanted to be able to generate static charts on the server, to do them in the browser, to do them on mobile devices, and really if I had written it in pure JavaScript I wouldn't be able to do that. So when GWT came along I was like, wow, this is an amazing tool. I can write one code base in Java, I can deploy it as an applet, as a servlet, to the browser as a client-side thing, to the Flash VM, to a mobile device. And that's what basically started the whole thing. Now, ChronoScope has a couple of interesting features which differentiates it from some of the other free chart libraries, like JFreeChart and stuff like that, which is it's really tuned for rendering time series. Because we needed to basically be able to render time series that could have anywhere from tens of thousands of points to millions of points. I mean, we're talking about, rendering every stock tick that's gone back for like the last 100 years, that kind of stuff, right? To be able to just zoom in on it. And so we had to do a lot of special architectural things to make it scale up like that. The other thing is that I wanted to basically make it very reactive, as reactive as I could be, because when you're moving around and you're flying around these things, you kind of get irritated if you kind of feel like you're stuck by the user interface. And I think that's one of the things that Google Maps did for mapping. If you remember the days of online mapping before Google Maps, it was very irritating to use. I mean, you had to click on whether you wanted to go north, east, south, or west, and had to wait for the server to refresh it. So I wanted to make sure that if you hit a button and you wanted to move the chart somewhere or zoom in, it would react within like 300 milliseconds. It kind of gave you a feel that it was real time. Of course, it's not our main business, so I wanted to make it open source so that other people could add to it and they could use it, and I could get people giving me feedback on how to improve it and things like that, which is already sort of, I've already got some benefits from doing that. I've already got a lot of feedback and extended things like so what are some of the other features, right? Well, bookmarkable chart state. If you remember, one of the nice things about GWT is it's got this history token support, and it makes Ajax work with the back button, right? So when you're navigating around the chart, and let's say you zoom into a particular section, let's say 1929 recession, you see the stocks going down, and you want to send that to a friend and say, hey, look at this particular piece. Look what that stock was doing right then and there. You actually, at any given time, you can just copy the URL out of the browser and send it to that friend, and when he goes to visit that URL, it will animate directly to that point in the chart, and he'll see the same thing you were looking at. So we wanted to be really friendly in terms of collaboration, and all this state is basically client-side bookmark, not server-side. You don't need a server to coordinate, this view sharing stuff.
Do you want to give them a quick preview of what the app looks like?
Yeah, I could go to it real quick and then come back to the slides. So, this one right here. So what you're looking at right here is an example of, basically a time series that's got about 18,000 data points in it. So if you go look at some of the other charting components that people have done that are client-side, even Flash-based ones like Google Finance, they don't render 18,000 data points because they weren't really written to basically deal with that. So there's a lot of actually optimizations that are there to deal with that. One of the things you can see is like if I go here and I say, go to a view where it's like this whole view represents 3 months. Okay, so I'm going to go look at 3 months at a time. I click on that, right? Well, what's happening is you saw when it animated, the curve kind of looked very coarse. Some of the points went away. And what happens is it renders more coarse-grained views of the data until basically it stops animating. Then it goes back to the more detailed version. So that's one of the ways we get performance is we basically create a multi-resolution view of the data set, and we pick the resolution level that will actually give us the performance latency that we would like, let's say 300 milliseconds or 100 milliseconds. And we render that many points while we're moving or animating or scrolling around. And then when we're done, it snaps back to the full res view. So if I like go back to the max view here, you can see this. Oops, use the mouse. Right? See, you get that, and it snaps back to the full view. Trust me, it's a lot quicker in Safari, and we've got a lot of apps running in the browser, a lot of GWT apps running in the browser. I'm kind of worried about the memory consumption right now because there's about 500 kilobytes of JavaScript loaded up into the browser right now, which contains those 18,000 data points. So it's probably really grinding the garbage collector to a halt.
Right. I want to have a little time for questions for everyone. So can we move to Fred real quick, and then let Fred show off a couple of his apps here.
Okay. I'm Fred Sauer. I'm an independent consultant, but not for GWT. GWT is just something fun, and I want to show you something fun with sound, so let me put the mic down here. So this is... My son did the artwork for this game. This is a 100% GWT application. It's really there for fun. It shows off what the browser can do, and to highlight what was said in some of the other talks, the browser was never intended to do this kind of thing. But GWT will definitely let you do it. Backtracking, in order to create this, you need to have sound support. And if anyone's ever looked at sound support, you realize that each of the browsers has different native capabilities. There's QuickTime plugins, there's Flash plugins, there's Opera has support for the audio object. There's a lot of differences, and to abstract all of that away, I created a library called GWT Voices, and depending on your browser and your platform, you can open up the support matrix, and it will tell you what it's able to get out of your browser, what audio MIME types are supported, and how they're supported. Flash can only do MP3. If you do not have Flash installed, then in some cases you can get it through another plugin or through native support. You can also then play with the different sound types. So that's just a little fun thing. But the bigger library that's probably more commonly known and is also available on T-shirt is this one here called Drag and Drop. And it's basically a fully functioning API to provide drag and drop support to your applications. The idea is you take this jar file, you drop it in, you take a widget that sources mouse events, something like a focus panel, and you register it and you just start dragging. You can do simple things like drag one widget around, drop it into a trash can, it's gone. You can also drop it somewhere where it's not allowed and it will snap back. There is the ability to do multiple selections. And one of the things you see going on here is that there's different positioners that will show you where things will be dropped when you let go. You can use drag proxies, which are these little blue shaded things. And there's a whole series of demos to just give you an idea of what you can do. We'll drag through just some of these. You can create your own kind of iGoogle page, drag columns along, drag blocks to different parts of the screen, drag rows out of tables, resize little widgets, and create your own little windows. Even iframes are possible. It's this one right here. And let's find something else interesting. Dragging things between lists. And this is just an idea of what you can do. Drag things to other tabs. There's some configurability in the latest release, allowing multiple selections or not. Drag sensitivity. If I set this to 10 pixels, then the thing doesn't move until I move at least 10 pixels. So that's kind of an accessibility. Drag proxies. So just something fun to play with. It's for you. Try it out, play with it. It's an Apache 2 license. Hope you enjoy it.
Very neat. So that's just 4 examples of some of the rich libraries and widgets available for GWT. So the question was, is there a date picker widget? And I think Rob's probably the one to handle that one.
That's a great, is this on? Hello? Yeah. All right. That's a great question. We've been talking about that. The GWT Widget Library has a date picker. It actually has 2. It has one that's in all Java, all GWT. Another one that uses JS graphics, JS calendar. It's just a wrapper widget over the JavaScript library. The Incubator project has one. I'm sure there's a couple others that I'm missing. There's no one that really solves all your problems.
Great. Any other questions from the audience? Yeah, so the comment was there's a date picker in the Incubator project that should be released soon. Is there another question from the audience?
Where's the question?
Off to your left there.
Yeah, I was wondering if you looked at the Java, the OpenAL Sound 3D stuff, because it's a pretty interesting way to approach 3D audio and audio through all the browsers, if you checked it out, or even actually through the VM.
Which sound project?
It's the OpenAL project. It's joal.dev.java.net. I'll show it to you afterwards. You can check it out. It's pretty interesting.
No, I've not seen it. Is it a Java applet plugin or?
It's more of a structure through the toolkit. I'll show it to you.
Okay.
And actually, you can load it. But the crazy thing is, it supports 3D audio and hardware acceleration too. So,
very good.
I had a question for you guys. Any success stories you want to share for people using your tools? Eric, I think you mentioned the number of downloads you guys had.
See, as of last week, let's see, GWT Designer, I'm going to call it GWT Designer, not GWT Designer, has been out for about a year and a month or 2, and we have over 10,000 registered users at this point. So, which is probably about 5 or 6 times more than we had expected. So we're very pleased with how fast it's been getting out there.
I just had a demo of Yesmail that apparently uses some widgets from the GWT Widget Library. Really, really cool app. I think we might be seeing some demos of it hopefully in the weeks to come online. Really beautiful looking app.
We've actually had a couple of companies that are doing some interesting things with like sensor networks that are monitoring things like water table levels and things in the ground that are using ChronoScope. And I'm not really going to mention them, but I think the important thing that I wanted to say is actually I found this, that if you do this for fun, like most of us have done, and you release it, even if you release it for open source, you know, you'll get people to join you and actually sometimes want to pay you for some of the work you've done, even though you've done it purely for fun. So I'd say get involved and join some of these projects that are on the code.google that page and get involved in the incubator, because first of all, you'll have a lot of fun doing it, and secondly, you know, you might get rewarded for it by somebody who finds it useful.
We have a question up front, Adam.
Yeah, this is not a question, just giving the info. Whoever looking the simple date picker, somebody has written for the GWT, that is Tapar, T-H-A-P-A-R, Tapar simple date picker. We are using actually for the GWT. You can use that widget.
Yeah, I'd actually done a Google for a date picker and had to choose from 4 or 5 different good GWT ones.
Yeah, I was talking to someone else about the fact that certain aspects of GWT you have to, for instance, for modularization, you have to keep in mind that there is that GWT essentially creates JavaScript. And I was wondering, how much have you had to keep in mind the fact that the output is JavaScript? Can you just ignore, just sort of let GWT produce stuff and then ignore the output?
Fred, do you want to handle that one?
I think in general, you actually have to worry about it very little. You end up a little bit in the leaf methods when you have to access element properties that maybe there's not a static DOM method for. You create your own method but then it's a one-line JNSI. So to give an example, comparing the two libraries I've shown here, the drag and drop, it's very little JNSI, just the one-liners. For GWT voices, there's quite a bit more because all the different browsers require different tricks to stick things into the DOM. And so there you see JNSI methods that have like 20 lines of code. And it's basically to create a native BG sound object or element or an object element, attach it to the DOM in the correct way so that you don't trigger pop-ups and dialog boxes and little warning messages, but can silently detect the availability of plugins and then continue on, or preload a sound. So it depends on your use. The one thing that I find that I do go into JNSI for is addressing cross-browser quirks that have not yet made it into the core GWT kind of DOM methods. So if I'm, like one of the things is that DOM has a get offset width and height, and there's an implementation for each of the browsers, whether it's a Gecko or an IE. For drag and drop, I often needed a get client height and get client width. Since there's not a method for it, I have to write my own. Since not all the browsers agree, Quirks and standard mode are different, I have to deal with all of that. So I essentially have my own versions of DOM implementation. I have a DOM util implementation, deferred binding for Safari, for IE, for Firefox, etc. But it's really in the implementation guts. It's not in the core library where you're dealing with moving things around, creating widgets. All of that is just straight Java, and you really don't have to think much about the fact that it's going into JavaScript. Hope that answers the question.
Looks like we got a question from Rob of Ajax4JSF, another integration package fame.
In the RPC presentation I gave yesterday, a whole bunch of people were really interested in forms, data binding, and tools to help support automatic uploading of form data and database integration and kind of drag and drop form stuff that would handle the RPC for you, or at least give you some support for it. And so it's kind of the kind of thing that a lot of web frameworks do a great job at now, but not GWT yet. This might be a question mainly for, I'm sorry, it's Eric from Instantiations. Is there any kind of support like that in the tool space that you know of or on the roadmap?
Not that I know of at the moment.
Not mine.
In our base products for like SWT, we actually support the SWT JFace data binding frameworks. So we're looking at doing the same kind of thing for GWT once some decent data binding frameworks emerge there. It would definitely be a very powerful enhancement once it's available.
Oh, we have a question right here.
Maybe I'll take the next question.
Yeah, this question is mostly for the actual widget library developers. Since two of you, well, actually all three of you primarily were doing this for fun, how are you actually doing the testing for cross-browser quirks? To actually, because I would assume that all of you have every single operating system, every single browser at your disposal at any particular time.
Anyone willing to donate a Mac?
The answer is I have a Mac Pro and this nice little thing called Parallels in VMware. So I basically, you just get a lot of memory on my Mac Pro, and I run simultaneously Linux and Windows. And I just have the, I just run the tests in every system. Now, if you attended Toby's talk earlier, he talked about this thing, which is like sort of the remote unit test thing, where you can launch these browsers over RMI and test on remote systems on your network, which is not really documented very well currently. But maybe you should track down Toby and force him to document it. But there is a architecture for doing it that Quit has, but they haven't really exposed it yet. I just want to really quickly say something about the idea of not caring that it's compiling to JavaScript. And I think he summed it up best by saying, you know, if you don't touch the leaf methods, you don't touch the browser environment, you don't have to worry too much. And that's kind of been true for me because I've actually deployed my app as both a Swing app and on Android and other things. But there's one caveat to that, though, is that the browser is a single-threaded environment. So you have to be really careful about your assumptions if you try to repurpose some Java code from, you know, into different environments, like let's say reuse a class that's simultaneously compiled in GWT and also on the server. You got to be careful about threading issues and, you know, concurrency, because I had problems where I moved code into another environment and all of a sudden stuff started blowing up because of it was no longer a single-threaded environment. So I ended up having to run everything on like the AWT event queue to simulate the browser, for example. But so.
Rob, I've got a question for you. Say I have a lot of free time in my hands. I don't really want to spend time with my dog, and I decide I want to develop a widget for one of your libraries. You know, is it a tough process? Is it an easy process?
For one of my libraries?
Yep.
Just send me a mail. That's as tough as it gets. You just have to agree that the Apache 2 license fits for you, and that's it. Actually, can I ask a question?
You bet.
Who's using GWT today? How many of you are not? Okay.
Adam, we have a question back here.
Not so much of a question, but it goes to the issue of the data binding with forms. If anybody's interested, there was an article in IBM Developer Works about combining GWT and X forms. It was a 4-part article. I think you can find it by searching on GWT and X forms, but the one warning is it was pretty ugly with a lot of JSNI to cross the bridge to the X forms implementation, but it's about the only one I've seen so far.
There was also a design document done, it's got to be 6 months or more now, on the Google contributors list for the GWT project. The design document listed the APIs that would be used for data-bound widgets, tree widgets that pull their data from some data source, which could be a server and things like that. So if you're interested in writing something, take a look at that. Maybe the API is right for you. It just hasn't been implemented yet.
Great. We got a question in the back there.
Yes. This question is for Mr. Sauer. Is a source available for that Hornet Blast game so we can go out and play with it and see how it's done?
It's not yet, but it's not because I'm trying to hide it. It's just because it's not done yet. The real goal was to create a game engine. In order to do that, you need end games so you can really test out your game engine. This is really only the first game. I kind of have a second one playing there. And so until the APIs flush out, the GWT-game project is really empty. But certainly if someone's interested in how it's done, willing to talk about it, I can probably even just share the code on it if you're interested. I just didn't want to publish it as, here's a game engine API. So send me an email and we can talk about it.
Quick question for all of you. Name your favorite tool or library that's not your own. Start down at Rob.
That would be the drag and drop library. And actually, every time I see on the mailing list that somebody's posted yet another blog entry on how to do drag and drop, or no offense to David Geary showing his drag and drop this morning, it's useful to maybe show that as an example in the book, but in practice, if I'm going to do drag and drop, I don't want to write it yet again. The drag and drop library really does everything I needed in a recent project. I was playing around with, I wanted to build a game, so I started writing a chess game. And I started looking at the different drag and drop implementations. My co-author Adam Tacey had written one. I checked that code and it didn't fit. The Rocket library has another one, it didn't fit. And then I checked out the drag and drop library of Fred's, and it just did everything.
Ray, what about you?
Well, I needed a really good and rich data grid component recently, and if anyone's ever seen the ones in like EXT.js and like Dojo, they look really nice and really slick. Not that you couldn't really do a lot of work on the grid that's in GWT, but I wanted to save time, and there happens to be a really nice project called mygwt.net And this guy basically has pretty much rewritten a lot of the ext.js components in GWT. So you're not wrapping JavaScript. It's actually natively written in GWT. And the performance on them is really nice, and they just look, I mean, spectacular. They make your app look really nice.
Fred or Eric?
I'm going to vote not for a GWT library, but for developer tool, Firebug, which has been mentioned many times. There's also recently a IE developer toolbar that you can install. Not as good, but you can dynamically edit CSS and view CSS. That's very helpful. There's either Opera or Safari. One of them has...
the inspector got massively upgraded in WebKit 3 recently.
So WebKit 3 has an excellent DOM inspector and everything.
Yeah.
Those are essential tools. And then favorite part about GWT, I think, was one of the upcoming questions on the list. Being able to set breakpoints, stepping through code, inspecting variables, changing them on the fly, all the things that you've come to know and love in a Java environment, suddenly you get those in Ajax. That's really where the power of GWT is.
I'm a big fan of pretty much all things GUI, so I like all the different add-on GWT widget packages, the widget library, MyGWT, and the GWT EXT stuff. I'm not sure if I have a favorite amongst those three, though.
Any other questions from the audience? I think we've got one right up here in the third row.
I don't have a question, but you asked about success stories, so I just wanted to mention that we have a large GWT production application, and we've used both Fred's drag and drop library and both of Robert's, the widget library and the server library, and they worked great. These guys have both been responsive to emails, and Fred fixed a bug in our application using the drag and drop, so I recommend them.
Actually, can we get a show of hands of anyone who's used a product that's represented up here? Well, probably about half the audience. That's pretty good.
Adam, we have a question from this guy in the back here.
Okay, guy in the Google shirt. Let's see if we'll give him the mic.
This isn't really a question. It's just I wanted to publicly thank you guys for all your hard work. The engineering team, I can say definitely on behalf of them that we love the stuff you guys are doing. And for every one of your projects and many more, some of the ones you've named, there's been so many, hey guys, come check this out moments. And so thanks very much for everything you've done, and we really follow your work closely every day. Thanks.
Adam, I think we have time for one more, and then I'll let you kind of make the closing comments.
All right. Mr. Ajaxian here.
So there's I think for a long time there's been let's say, a year ago or so, there's been a perception that GWT produces these, 100, 200, 500K JavaScript files, and it's got to be Bloat Bear, what have you. And on the other hand, we've heard a lot about how GWT, make sure you're not leaking memory and what have you. What have your experiences been in terms of sort of the reliability, robustness, and sort of memory footprint nature of your GWT applications?
Can I? Let me say this. You should use GWT to do things that you need to get done. You don't do it just so you can add more animations to your page. So if the option is 500K of GWT code, what's the other option? Meg and a half of JavaScript? So I don't really see there's a comparison.
Ray, did you have something?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a common misperception that GWT produces bloated code. You see it frequently in bloggers who are basically JavaScript ninjas who talk about GWT being very bulky. And it's true if you write a one-line app that just prints hello world, it's going to be pretty bulky compared to a typical JavaScript app because it's got to pull in standard things like arrays and things like that. However, anytime you get above like a non-trivial app, just a few dozen lines of code, GWT excels both in performance and producing smaller code. So if you take any of the really popular large JavaScript libraries that I actually like, but if you look at them like Dojo and ext.js, go look at their demos, and uncompressed gzip, they are about 500K of JavaScript. Go look at Dojo's mail application, for example, and compare it to the GWT mail demo. The GWT mail demo gzipped is 47 kilobytes. The Dojo one's over 100K. And it starts up in 5 seconds in Dojo and 1 second in GWT. So I think it's a common myth that actually GWT is bloated and bulky. It actually produces very, very optimized code. And that's one of the reasons why I was attracted to it.
And I think I would like to add to that we are nowhere probably near the end of what the GWT compiler can do. There's a lot of stuff in 1.5, for those of you that have been following the trunk, that make applications smaller, compress better, and run faster. And we're just at the tip of the iceberg there. There are simple things that can be done to remove some of the semicolons and adjust the white space that give us another percentage of improvement. Just trivial things. In 1.5, there's some inlining of JavaScript code. It does some calculations to figure out whether the inlining actually produces fewer bytes of code. This is stuff you can't code by hand. And by doing nothing other than recompiling your application a month from now, and again 6 months from now, your app's going to be smaller and faster. What other framework provides that for you?
Great. I hope this helped you guys learn a little bit about the third-party tools and libraries available. I'd just like to reiterate what Bruce said and just give these guys a round of applause for all the hard work they've done.